Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to our English lessons, okay, at our Manuel International School. So today we will be discussing the comma, okay. So what is a comma, okay? A comma is a punctuation mark indicating a pause between parts of a sentence or separating items in a list. A comma also clarifies the meaning in the sentences for the reader. That's very, very important to understand. Okay, so a comma basically is a punctuation mark. What does that mean? A punctuation mark is those marks that we find when we are reading, when we are writing, like the full stop, the period, the exclamation mark, the commas, the semicolon. All of these are called punctuation marks. Okay, and the comma, okay, its function is basically to show a pause between parts of a sentence or to separate items in a list, okay, in a sentence, right? And this is how a comma looks. This is a sign of a comma. So now that we understand what a comma is and what its function is, we will basically look at a few rules of the comma, okay? So the first rule that I want to draw everyone's attention to is that when we write dates and places, we need to put a comma, okay, as well. So if we write a date, we will mention the month, we will mention the day, and after the day, we'll put a comma and then the year. So like in this example of a year, we are saying June the 4th, comma, 2005. Month, day, and year. Similarly, when we are writing about places, we will write firstly the district and then the state, or we will write the state and then basically the country that the state is in. Okay, so in this example, we have here Indianapolis, comma, and then Indiana. So Indianapolis is found in the state Indiana. Similarly, if we want to look at a local example, we have the city Riyadh, right? And a district in Riyadh is called Ta'awun. So I will write Ta'awun over here, comma, Riyadh. And in the example where we use a state and a country, we can say Riyadh, comma, and then Saudi Arabia, the country. Okay, so that is the first rule that we need to understand. When we write dates and places, we need to include the comma as well. Okay. The second rule I want you to look at is basically when we use the comma with a series. Okay, so we will use a comma to separate in a series. A series is basically a number of events. It's a number of objects and a number, or it can be a number of people of a similar or related kind coming one after the one after another. Okay, so anything that is similar, like food. If you want to write something about food, if you want to write about, let's say you want to write about vegetables, fruit, and coffee. So coffee, vegetables, and fruit are all under the umbrella of food. Yeah, it's a similar or related kind. Okay, so when we write these type of things, series, then we need to use commas as well. So if we look at this particular example over here, the sentence reads, she ate cake, comma, ice cream, comma, and cookies at the party. So cake, ice cream, and cookies are one series because it is all food that this person is talking about, okay, in this particular sentence. So if we want to, if we have to use a comma to separate in a series. So if we want to talk about 5 things in a series, then before we get to the last item of the series, we need to put a comma and also and. Let me make an example for you guys. If I say, she ate cake, ice cream, she ate cake, comma, ice cream, comma, fruit, comma, 3, chocolates, comma, 4, and cookies at the party. So before the last, the 5th one, I need to put a comma in the series and put the conjunction and then we carry on with the series. So it's very, very important to put a comma to separate in a series of related ideas. Okay. Then The third rule of the comma and how we use it is basically when we greet in a letter. So if we start our letter, okay, we need to put a comma after the person we're addressing in the letter. If we're talking to Santa Claus, for example, like this picture is showing us, we say, "Dear Santa, comma," then we start with our letter. Okay, if you're addressing a letter to your principal, you will say, "Dear Mr. Principal," or "Dear Mr. Sultan, comma, all I want is this for Eid al-Mubarak and Eid al-Adha." Okay, so when we greet in a letter, we need to put a comma. That is the third rule of using our commas. Okay. And here is some more examples of how we use the comma when we greet in a letter or an email, okay, or whatever formal communication we're writing. If we start off our letters and our emails, we say, "Dear Miss A, comma, dear the person, comma, dear mom, dear Santa, comma." So the commas are always placed after the person we're addressing. And at the end of our letter, before we put our names at the bottom, or at the end of the email, before we put our names at the bottom, we need to put a comma as well. Like, for example, if I say, "Dear Mr. Sultan, I would like to know when the end of the school year is. Your friend," before I end my letter, "your friend, comma, Mr. Ali," for example. Or if I use the word love, before I put my name, I put love, comma, "Thanks again for assisting me, Mr. Sultan, comma, and my name." So that's at the end of a letter or an email. Okay, then we look at the fourth rule. The fourth rule is basically stating that we need to use a comma and a coordinating conjunction, okay, to form a compound sentence. Now, I explained this to you guys and to everyone 2 weeks ago about compound sentences and coordinating conjunctions. Okay, so a compound sentence, just to recap, a compound sentence is basically two or more sentences joined together by a conjunction. That's what it is. So when we join two or more sentences together, we need to put a comma at the first sentence, then we need to put the conjunction to join the two simple sentences or three simple sentences and form a compound sentence. That is what the fourth rule is stating. When we are forming and creating and making a compound sentence with two or more simple sentences, we need to place a comma and a coordinating conjunction to make that work. Then the fifth rule is, when we use a comma, is we need to use a comma after a long introductory sentence. If we look at this picture over here, we see Nathan over here and a dog. Okay, so the introductory sentence over here is stating, "Without a thought for his own safety, comma, Nathan rescued the dog." So this is the introductory sentence. This is the first sentence of this particular story of how Nathan saved or rescued the dog. Okay. So introductory sentence, "Without a thought for his own safety." He didn't care whether he was going to drown or whether the water will be very, very dangerous. He went into the water, not caring about anything, to save his dog. Okay, so after introducing or using an introductory sentence, we need to put a comma and then state what happened, like in this case. Then the sixth rule is basically when we is the direct address. When we're addressing someone directly, okay? If I want to speak to my dad only or to my mom only, we need to state dad, mom, comma, and then we say what we need to say, okay? So in this example, we do see, "Dad, comma, are you awake?" Can you guys see? When I want to directly address, when I want to show the person you're speaking to, when I want to directly address my father, I will say, "Dad, comma, are you awake?" Because I'm directing, I want to know if my dad is awake. I don't want to know if my brother or my sister or anyone else is awake. I'm addressing this question, "Are you awake?" only to my dad. So that is why we need to put the person we are addressing first, then a comma, and then we ask the question, we address the question to him. In the second example, this is also very, very clear. "Mom, I found my shoes." You want to tell your mommy that you found your shoes, so you need to state, "Mommy, comma, I found my shoes. You're not going to tell your dad you found the shoes, because your dad is not the person who asked you if you found your shoes or not. Okay, so you want to address it to your mommy. You put you write the word mom, comma, and then you say what you need to say to your mommy. So that is the sixth rule, where we use the comma to directly address someone. Yeah. Then the seventh rule and the final rule. Okay, so we also need to use commas with direct quotations. So when I want to tell someone, when I write that someone else said this, then I need to use a comma as well. In this example, we see I wish in inverted commas, meaning I'm quoting someone. I wish, who did we quote? Grace. I wish commented Grace. I wish, comma, said Grace. So, comma. So what I'm showing you guys over here is, if you want to say what someone else said, you want to quote what someone else said, you need to use inverted commas and put a comma, and then you say from who you're quoting, or who you are quoting from, and whose words you are using. So if I, for example, now if I want to quote my principal at school, I would say, I wish the coronavirus are going to be stopping in Riyadh very, very soon, said Mr. Sultan. Okay, so what did I do now? I quoted Mr. Sultan, because I said, I wish the coronavirus can be completed and can be removed from Riyadh, comma, said Mr. Sultan. So I'm directly quoting Mr. Sultan, so I need to use my inverted commas and a comma. So that is basically today's lesson, guys. And so just to recap on what we learned today, we basically learned about the comma. Okay, this is the sign of a comma and why we need to use the comma when we write, and identify them when we read. So we're using the comma to indicate a pause between parts of a sentence, or to separate items in a list. And the function of a comma is basically to clarify the meaning in the sentences for the reader. Okay, so I hope you guys had a very fruitful few minutes with me. Thank you so much for joining me, and have a very, very lovely day. Bye-bye.